with Dr. Mihaela Moscaliuc, who is the author of 3 poetry collections, Cemetery Ink, Immigrant Model, both from the University of Pittsburgh Press, and Father Dirt. She has also translated Liliana Ursus Clay and Star, and Carmelia Leonte's The Hiss of the Viper. And she's the editor of Insane Devotion on the Writing of Gerald Stern, and co-editor of Borderlines, Poems of Migration. Today's talk is titled Exophonic Soundbites. So this talk places and discusses Mihaela Moscaliuc's writing in the context of various approaches to diasporic identities and diasporic literature, with an emphasis on voice, embracing uncool labels, and the implications of writing in someone else's tongue from an absence and out of fissures. The floor is yours, Mihaela Moscaliuc. The digital microphone, the virtual microphone is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Mohammed and Laura and Theo and BBU and IRF and Phantasma. It's a great honor also to be here with Dominica and Carmen, whose work I know but have never met in person physically. So I realized as you're reading the description that actually don't mention diasporic identities at all in my talk. So exophonic soundbites, and they're called soundbites because when Theo approached me, I didn't have anything written. I did not know exactly where this talk was going to go, and you'll see it's as incohesive as I am as a person and as a writer. So it's written in short little fragments. A cartoon by Matthew Diffie, published in the August 5th, 2002 issue of The New Yorker, shows a man answering the phone. "I'm sorry, you have the wrong language," the caption reads. You may have guessed the man is white, casually elegant, presumably an intellectual, or at least a reader, if we are to go by the usual stereotypes. Thick glasses and a thick comb, he has bookmarked with his finger. Someone has interrupted his reading. Someone has assaulted his ears with foreign sounds. This invisible someone uses a tongue deemed wrong, or has reached a tongue, the man's English, for which she is wrong, that is, unsuitable, unworthy of. Either way, the non-English speaker, or perhaps heavily accented or just slightly accented English speaker, is rebuked and reminded of the unassailable right of the English language to be the only right language. Is it anxiety, repulsion, or both that I see stamped on the man's face? Relax. Nutsva Grija, I want to reassure him, I won't inconvenience you too much. But I am also gloating, knowing that I managed to unsettle him, even momentarily, that he feels disoriented by this interruption, that as he sits down and reopens his book in English without doubt, the letters will look a little blurry, a little out of focus. His tongue in my mouth, and not in a way from which he could derive pleasure or power, but discomfort. I slipped into and found refuge in the English language by falling in love with its music and the promise of sweet relief from the routine of life under communism, long before I knew that someday I would cross physical borders and immigrate to the United States, leaving my whole family behind. A decade or so later, while reading the lyrics of songs I had memorized as an initial attempt to learn English, I realized how much I had misread and mislearned. In some cases, what I had been carrying with me for years were Mondegreens. Bob Dylan's Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands, for instance, I had misheard and hummed for years as I said I'd leave you the loneliness. I would say it was a combination of the desire to rescue the beauty of what had been misapprehended and the guilt of having misapprehended someone else's intent that led me to writing. That and the fear of forgetting, especially of forgetting myself in a new land, within a new culture and a new family, the one I made rather than belonged to. That and the sense that I would never finish translating myself to myself in this new land and language. Quote, I fold my wings in rituals no one can see, end of quote, writes poet Afa Michael Weaver. Writing became a way of ritualizing belonging. If I write in someone else's tongue of things in my tongue, do I claim a stake in both? Do I fail both tongues and the bodies they belong to? The native tongue, the tongue of intimacy, protects those familial spaces that may disappear in the process of Americanization. I use Romanian with my parents, relatives, friends, sometimes in my journal and for some reading. In my home life and public life, I function almost exclusively in English. The poem asserts itself as an act of mediation. It performs intimacy, if such a thing is possible. After my first poetry collection, Father Dirt, came out in 2010, I visited a class at a university in Philadelphia. They had read and discussed my book, and during the Q&A, a student asked me what I thought about being pigeonholed as an immigrant writer. Not that there's anything wrong with that, she quickly added, but doesn't the label bother me enough to want to write about something else moving forward? I was so taken aback by the question, though I shouldn't have been, that I can't remember my answer. For a month, though, I obsessed over the question. I did not write a single line for over a year. And then I did and kept going and found relief in the realization that I might never stop writing out of experiences that, even when not related to emigration or immigration, even if concerned with a fig or a snowdrop or a conflict on American soil, I will do it with the awareness and sensibility of someone who is irrevocably of two worlds and the poetic multiverses they generate. Not only does being classified as an immigrant poet not bother me, as it did for a short time when I desperately wanted to feel unproblematically at home in and accepted by America, but I've embraced the label as a self-identifier, no matter how uncool that is. I write because I am an immigrant, out of necessity, out of the need to narrativize and storify my experiences. I write because it cannot be otherwise. The late fiction writer Bharati Mukherjee insisted on being called an American writer, not an Indian American or Asian American writer, although she came to Canada, then the United States, as an immigrant and wrote largely about hyphenated experiences. This insistence led to the misperception that she was distancing herself from her roots. Quote, my rejection of hyphenation has been called race treachery, she said, but it is really a demand that America deliver the promises of its dream to all its citizens equally. She rejected what she saw as the balkanization of ethnicity, minority groups pitted against each other for very small portions of the pie. I do not think of myself as an American writer, but as an immigrant exophonic writer with Romanian and American citizenship, and have no strong feelings, as Mukherjee did, about hyphenation or the double work of cleaving such hyphenation performs. At the same time, I see my position as far more connected, actually intimately connected to Mukherjee's than our preferred labels might suggest. An immigrant marks a moment of crisis in a national narrative, a collision between outside and inside, which, though performed by millions, remains always singular in its destabilizing power and its effects on both the immigrant and on America. This is the locus where cultural contracts between the newcomer and the adoptive nation are figuratively and often literally negotiated. As an immigrant, you occupy a position of conditional belonging, and you're also perceived as a threat to the dominant culture. You are both kept in a state of alertness. Mukherjee detested the concept of America as a melting pot, as, quote, it assumed a one-way transformation, an assimilation where all non-Anglos were expected to scrub down. She was interested in the two-way process where America changed her while she changed America. Talking about bilingual writers, Sylvia Molloy says, one always writes from an absence, the choice of a language automatically signifying the postponement of another. The absence of what is postponed continues to work obscurely on the chosen language, suffusing it, even better, contaminating it with an autrement dit. I write to fill loud absences more than out of longing or nostalgia, or perhaps I'm writing from the one and the same place, but calling it one thing rather than the other. The tongue bends, contorts, sucks, cups, lengthens, flattens. It's the most tenacious and tireless organ, a matrix of muscle attached only at one end. I'm attached at both ends. My tongue struggles to perform what I demand. I used to believe that feeling at home in the idiom of a language was a measure of belonging. I've lived in the United States for 1 year longer than in Romania. The hyphen is stronger than the hyphenation, a cut rather than a tether that holds the two halves. Din când în când, îmi mai pică fisa, dar nu prea știu cum să trec menta. In Romanian, I forget basic words and trip on syntax, but the idiom feels integral to and congruous with who I am. In English, the idiom has never and will never belong to me. Last night, while responding to a colleague's email, I wrote that maybe we're both barking at the wrong tree, but couldn't get past the image the literal conjured, so I deleted and replaced with some bland phrasing. I then deleted again and returned to the barking at the wrong tree, pressed send, feeling like a little charlatan, a pitiful impersonator. I've been obsessing about voice, what that means in the context of a diasporic or immigrant writer. Do I have a voice that is distinctly, unequivocally mine? Probably not. We write from various aspects of our lives, and those that demand attention from me, those that nudge and haunt and insist themselves, feel disparate and discordant. Irish-American writer Colin McCann's statement, "We get our voices from the voices of others," feels very true to who I am as a writer. I came to writing through the voices of others in an attempt to lend others words. I write out of the personal and the collective as a way of making sense of who I am in relation to people and places across borders and times here in the United States, in Romania, and in other parts of Europe with friends dispersed. Korean-American poet Myung-Min Kim says that part of the meaning of being a historical subject is to engage in how to tell, how to refigure and reinvent and reoccupy the manner of telling. Even if I want to, I cannot escape the awareness that I write from multiple subject positions and always from the position of being a historical subject, that I write out of conflicting stories, beings, modes of being in the world. And I think I have 6 minutes left. So I would like to read just a couple of poems. I don't sound all abstract. And I'm going to take this risk. I'm going to write the first poem I wrote in English, tiny poem, self-portrait. I thicken coffee with chocolate, language with accented mistranslations, love with words foreign, oblong and trembled and plum branded. I like the smell of yesterday's clothes. It insists we resume where we left off. And a poem also from my first book, maybe. The opening poem, How to Ask for My Hand at My Grandmother's Grave. And it's true, I actually brought my husband, the man who was to become my husband, to my grandmother's grave in Suceava to propose to me. What a waste of space. You murmur as a train cuts through a cemetery whose halves rest like drowsy wings between two pine forests. Then spooky, as though a window zips by faces, smiling from porcelain plates glued to crosses. You've crossed the ocean to marry me, so I cannot say I knew only one of them. But they're all mine. This dead turned strigoi will not return to their bodies because the earth is too loud and the town has betrayed them. But I have to warn you. We carry cemeteries on our heads, in our bellies, round our ankles. We carry them to work and we carry them to sleep. And when we make love, they moan, they rattle, they sing. When our spines start sinking, we spit and curse and dance the pain off. When I bring you to grandmother's grave behind the Dacian fortress, she'll be armed with questions. How hardy your love, how soft your fingers, and you're dead. How do you spoil them? After you cup your hands to catch the soul, she'll want to know, how do you release it? Don't tell her about ashes thrown to winds. Don't say you've never spilled red wine onto the earth to quench your father's thirst, or that you never read him the Sunday paper. Do not tell her you love him, but have never seen his grave. I'll translate your silence and spread a white cloth under the rose trellis. We'll offer walnut breads and gossip, and she'll forgive and bless us, then send me back across the ocean with a saddlebag of ghosts. And I will end with a very recent poem. I've been writing a lot about cemeteries, and that's part of the ritual. The first thing I do when I get home every summer is go to the cemetery. And let's see, the poem uses, it's a sort of a premature elegy. The poem uses towards the conching and the tempering. Here are the processes used in the manufacture of chocolate that helps evenly distribute cacao butter within chocolate and improve flavor. And I make my own chocolate, so buy chocolate. I will die one day in this land, and you will fly back a single bar of me packed in dry ice. The airport dogs will sniff the carousel for traces of live matter, and the cacao nut smell will send them whimpering. Make sure I'm conched right, neither too gritty nor too emulsified, tempered properly, so I'm not laced in sugar bloom. My already departed will attend to the rest. For 7 years, on days of the dead, birthdays, anniversaries, drive your family to any cemetery gate to hand out dark assortments the children begged the night before. Keep the tradition, even if no one is ever waiting. If I'm lucky, they will say, Grandma overdosed on nibs. Say she got what she wanted, death by chocolate. They'll make myth of this. Thank you very much.